Okay, so the beginning of the new unit. This new unit is the Cold War. So make a new page. Start on the new page, the Cold War, and we're going to start off with big number A. Meet a new president, Harry Truman. Now, technically, we've already met Truman. Technically, he was the president at the end of the war. He finished off World War II, but we didn't talk about him at all. So let's talk about him now. All right. So he was Franklin Roosevelt's vice president. Franklin Roosevelt died in office, and Truman, became president. Truman's from Missouri, and he is generally regarded as one of our best presidents. He's almost always listed as one of the best, one of the top presidents we've ever had. He's frequently in the top 5. I'm not sure I've ever seen him ranked below the top 10. So he's generally regarded very, very highly regarded, which is kind of interesting because he was a nobody. In fact, Franklin Roosevelt made him his vice president. Franklin Roosevelt had 3 different vice presidents, right? And he had made Truman his vice president because Truman was such a nobody that Franklin knew that he would never challenge him, and that Truman would just be like a nobody in the background that wouldn't cause any trouble, basically. And then Franklin dies, and Truman goes on to become president he's going to get elected, serve a full term, and then get elected again as well. So his dominant issue by far and away is the Cold War. Everything about his presidency is dealing with the Cold War. So at the end of World War II, he's having to return to normalcy. And so he's dealing with this idea that the entire world is now going to be cut in half between the Soviet Union and the United States, right? Most of the world has fallen apart. Most of the world's fallen apart. Most of the world is destroyed, right? And so he's left facing what do you do with a super powerful USSR, super powerful Soviet Union. So here's what you do. Big number B, an Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain descends upon Europe. Winston Churchill gives us an Iron Curtain speech in Missouri. And the Iron Curtain is the metaphor used for the split in Europe between the East and the West, between the communists and the free people. Okay, it's the metaphor used for the split between the East and the West. The green countries on this map are going to be what we call the West, right? These are going to be the democracies. These are going to be allied with the United States. The red countries are what we're going to call the East, and they're going to be communist countries, and they're going to be allied with the Soviet Union. Now, these countries over here did not want to be part of the Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union, when the Soviet troops took it over, they forced them to become communists. They forced them to do this, and the Soviets are basically occupying these countries. These white countries here are technically not affiliated, but Yugoslavia is going to become communist pretty quickly. It'll become communist pretty quickly. Albania is going to be communist. Albania may not be communist. I don't remember. Albania tries to stay neutral. But Yugoslavia will also be red. Austria kind of goes back and forth a little bit, right? And then Finland is desperately trying to not be communist. What stands out the most here is the Germany, right? You may notice here on the map, we have East Germany and West Germany. So at the end of the war, they cut Germany into 4 pieces, basically, right? So England got a piece, US got a piece, France got a piece, and then the Soviets got a piece. And they cut Germany into those pieces, and each of those allied countries were occupying a part of Germany. The long-term plan was for them to reunite and create a new Germany, but they couldn't agree on what new Germany they wanted. The Soviet Union wanted Germany to be as poor and weak as possible, right? And I think we can probably understand why they want that, right? Like, what's the argument? What's the argument that Stalin's going to make?
They did a lot that the Germans did a lot of bad things to the Russians in World War II, and it's sort of payback.
Yeah, not just World War II though, right? What else?
They're
World War I.
Yeah.
Right? The Soviets are like, look, in 30 years, Germany has attacked us twice, right? Germany picked the fight 2 times, both times invaded our country, and both times killed 12 million the first time and 24 million the second time, right? So in 30 years, the Germans have killed almost 40 million Russians. And in both cases, the Germans started it, right? The Soviets are like, screw these guys. We do not care about them at all. We do not want them to be powerful. We do not want them to be wealthy. We do not want them to be anything except for weak. The result is that these three parts get unified as a democratic West Germany that's going to become, pro-America. And this other section is going to become communist East Germany. And the Soviets are going to keep it weak. They're going to keep it weak. They're going to rebuild it last, right? They're going to rebuild everything else before they rebuild this one. They're going to let them just exist in poverty forever, basically. Because the Soviets do not care about the Germans at all. Okay, the last thing. Okay, we're going to do these 2 things and then we'll be done. Okay, so big number B. B is the United Nations. One of the negotiations at the end of the war was that they needed some way to prevent future wars. And so the United Nations is an organization of countries. It's an organization of countries meant to try to prevent future wars. The UN can't stop wars, but what the UN does is it presents an area where all of the countries can negotiate whatever their problems are. So it's a place where countries can go to negotiate. It's a place where countries can go to make complaints about each other, to try to write laws to affect each other, that kind of stuff. Okay. The UN is headed up by a council of 5 countries. These are called the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. The 5 permanent members, and here they are. Okay, the United States, Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, China, France. Why these 5? Why these 5?
I know, like, I'm not 100% sure about China, but I know, like, a lot of them were, like, in World War II and World War I, and, like, main powers in fighting. So they all sort of, like, came together so that they don't have to fight so much anymore.
So China absolutely was in World War II. Japan invaded China and occupied China the whole war, right? These are the countries that won World War II. The United States, the Soviet Union, and England, and then China and France both were on the winning side, but they both had been invaded and conquered, right? So notably absent from this list, notably absent from this 5, who do you think stands out to you as missing?
From, like, winners and stuff.
Who?
China. Sorry, I'm, like, haven't been 100% caught up. Would it
If
be,
you're
like,
thinking about countries in the world today, think about countries in the world today. Which countries do you think are missing?
from, like, also who, hold on, sorry. From, like, also
Okay,
who,
so
sorry.
it's fine. Let me help you out. Okay, so these 5 countries, they're the permanent members, which means that they always have a seat no matter what, and they get to veto anything. Any bill at all, they can stop the bill. Right? That's a lot of power. It's a lot of power. And there's a lot of countries around the world today that are very wealthy, very powerful countries that are not in this big 5. Okay, notably absent from the big 5, Germany and Japan. Right? Germany and Japan are 2 of the richest countries on the planet. Right? Japan is the 3rd richest country on the planet, and Germany is the 4th richest country on the planet. Right? And they're notably absent from this list. Right? These guys absolutely don't want Germany and Japan to be part of it after World War II. Right? But today, maybe they should be because they're so wealthy. Right? Also notably absent and a really sore subject is India. Right? India tries making this argument. India's like, dude, we're like the 2nd largest country on the planet Earth. we should be part of this, right? India is not a country in 1945. India becomes a country in 1947. So it's occupied by England at the time, right? So India is not in the list, but India should be in the list probably, right? Notably absent also is Brazil. Brazil also one of the largest countries in the world, and Brazil and India have oftentimes made an argument that they should both be added. Brazil and India, they're oftentimes fighting to be added. Okay, also notably absent, no African countries. Africa represents more than a third of the United Nations countries, and there's no African countries. This is something that Nigeria and South Africa are both going to fight about, right? That they want to be added. Also, no Muslim countries. Muslims are about a fourth of the planet, and there's no Muslim countries, right? So this is a point of contact. This is a point of conflict where a lot of these countries are going to fight and argue about this for a long, long time. Okay. The biggest thing you need to know about the United Nations is that the United Nations is a place for negotiation. That's the most important, right? It's not a government, like it's not intended to be a government. It isn't that, right? It's not the United States of Earth. It's not that. It's intended to be a negotiation place. Okay, here's the last thing we're going to put on here is the Nuremberg trials. Okay, so this will be big number C, right? No, D.
I think it might be D.
Yeah, D.
Yeah.
It was A, B, C, D. All right, so D is the Nuremberg trials. The Nuremberg trials are where the United States, England, and the Soviet Union, and France put the Nazis on trial. The leaders of the Nazi empire, the leaders of the Nazis, you put them on trial, including some pretty high profile people, right? People who like were, the founders of the Holocaust and stuff like that. Okay, a bunch of these Nazis are executed. They're executed, they're put on trial and they're executed. What matters here for the Nuremberg trials is this is the first time that there's ever going to be an international court. An international court and an international definition of what genocide is and what a crime against humanity is. This is going to become the basis of all future law, of all the future laws and future court systems and stuff. And so this is a really, really important thing. It's like one of the very first things that that comes out of this, like end of the war, creating the United Nations and stuff like that at the Nuremberg trials. Okay. We'll pick up with the rest of this stuff later, but that's a good place to stop.
Cool.
All right. Do you think you understand that stuff pretty good?
I think so.
Okay, we'll leave it there.